Discover the incredible moment when a blind black boy's unexpected voice left everyone speechless. Malik sat alone in the library's quiet corner, surrounded by the musty scent of old books and the rhythmic tapping of his fingertips against the acoustic guitar strings. It was just him and his music, a connection his blind eyes couldn't see but his soul could feel. The world outside pulsed with a vibrancy he could almost touch. He could hear the chatter of neighborhood kids and the distant car horns, and yet here he was, an island of solitude adrift in a sea of sound. Why do I even try? He muttered to himself, the echo of his own doubts stinging just as sharply as a physical wound. His mother, busy juggling 3 jobs to keep their small apartment afloat, often expressed her concern she wanted to shield him from the harsh comments of classmates who didn't understand. But Malik yearned for more. He ached to share his message through the music that flowed from his heart. How could he make her understand? The annual talent show loomed near, an opportunity that both excited and terrified him. On one hand, the idea of sharing his voice ignited a flicker of hope, on the other, the thought of judgment weighed down on him like a heavy stone. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The truth clawed inside him, wrenching his insides with uncertainty. What if his classmates laughed? What if the very thing meant to set him free became another cage? Memories of Mr. Johnson, his mentor, flooded his mind. The retired music teacher had believed in his potential, watching him weave lyrics from the struggles in his heart during their late-night songwriting sessions. Yet even with that support, Malik felt exposed, like a lobster held up in a market, discomfort twisted in his stomach. Doubt magnified as he pictured the rival classmate, Clyde, mocking his very essence during rehearsals, drawing out a meek laughter from their peers that twisted like a knife. Malik's breath quickened. Was he just a blind black boy in a world quick to judge? Or was he more? Amidst the haunting question, an unexpected anger surged within him, an indignation fueled by the weight of isolation. These conflicting thoughts spun wildly, and as rehearsal day approached, Malik felt squeezed, as if he were at the center of a tempest. Could he withstand the storm? Was he destined to remain voiceless, lost in the shadows where he had always existed? The night of the talent show loomed larger than life, and at that moment, staring at the floor where he would soon stand, Malik realized he was teetering on the edge of an immense chasm. What if he could rise above the noise? But could he confront the fear clawing at him, threatening to hold him back? Desire pulsed in his veins, battling against doubt. It was not just about the performance, it was about becoming someone resilient, a voice in the world that needed to be heard. The air thickened, an electric anticipation buzzing beneath his skin. Malik was left grappling with the storm that raged within, a question hanging in the air: would he take the plunge into the unknown, embracing the uncertainty waiting just beyond that stage? Malik paced the small room in a rhythmic manner, the familiar bounce of his heels against the wooden floor serving as a metronome for his spiraling thoughts. Tomorrow was the talent show, a showcase he had tormented himself over for weeks. He struggled to breathe, enveloped in a labyrinth of anxiety. The shadows twisted and twined, drawing his mind to Clyde's previous jabs about his blindness, the cruel taunts echoing like distant thunder, reminding him of the potential storm that awaited him. That he closed his eyes, seeking solace in the music that had always brought him peace. The guitar's smooth wood felt cool against his fingers, grounding him. It was a reminder of who he was, Malik, the boy who poured his heart into melodies. In that moment, he recalled the words of Mr. Johnson, encouraging him to transform his pain into art. Strumming softly, he played a melody infused with longing and hope, a harmonized whisper against the tidal wave of self-doubt that threatened to drown him. What if tomorrow, he whispered to himself, the words barely audible against the gentle strum of the strings. What if tomorrow was not the end, but a beginning? A way to rise and reclaim every drop of joy he had felt during those late-night sessions. As he played, the strains of his emotions began to shape into something tangible, like sunlight breaking through dark clouds. He felt a spark ignite within, a fleeting thought that maybe he could channel his fears into power, yet, standing there, he confronted an unsettling truth: vulnerability and courage danced on the same razor's edge. What if sharing his music revealed an unseen wound? Slumping down onto the old chair, he rested his head against the back, letting the clear twinkle of the stars outside pierce through his anxiety. The night felt full of infinite possibilities, a reminder that the world outside his bubble was alive, teeming with voices eager to be heard. But then again, what if his voice faltered? What if the waves of laughter crested high, swallowing him whole? Malik clenched the guitar tighter, his knuckles whitening. It would be so simple to quit, to succumb to the notion that he was not cut out for this path. But alongside the fear igniting his instincts to retreat was an undeniable pull, a siren song calling him forward, toward growth. Taking a deep breath, he opened his eyes and visualized the stage, the wooden floor bathed in light, the audience an abstract collection of faces. He imagined their anticipatory silence, waiting for him to break it with his music. The light, he realized, would not blind him. Instead, it could guide him. The weight of his mother's hopes and the fear of mockery battled within him, yet something shifted. An idea sparked a commitment to confront the thoughts that seemed to govern who he was. He would honor his mother's desire for protection by showcasing his resilience. He would be more than their perceptions, he would be the music. With that realization came focus. He began to construct a plan for the performance, shaping each note into an expression of his journey, the challenges he faced, the lessons he learned. This was not just about singing, it was a means of storytelling through sound. He hesitated for a moment before opening a notebook and writing down the lyrics that had become his lifeline. Tomorrow's performance would be his affirmation, not just for himself, but for everyone who felt silenced by circumstance. As the moonlight poured through the window, illuminating his hands on the guitar, Malik's heart raced with a blend of trepidation and hope. He was not just preparing for a show, he was readying to unveil his soul. The time had come to face everything he had feared, but in the crucible of uncertainty, he felt an unexpected resolve take root. Would he embrace his moment and step into the light, or would fear tighten its grip, pulling him back into the dark? The sun crept over the horizon, casting a golden hue through Malik's window, illuminating the room that had been both his prison and sanctuary. He blinked against the early light, acutely aware that today was not just an ordinary day. It bore the weight of expectations and dreams that clung to him like the humidity in the summer air. Malik's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the guitar, the familiar instrument feeling both comforting and daunting. His stomach churned in rhythmic pulses of dread. The memories of Clyde's laughter echoed in his mind, yet the faintest flicker of resolve pushed those memories aside. He wouldn't let them stifle his voice today. What would it feel like to step onto that stage, not just existing, but living every note as if they were a lifeline? He envisioned each stride forward, the wooden floor beneath his feet vibrating with the energy of his heartbeat. He took a moment to breathe in deeply, letting the air fill his lungs before exhaling slowly. This was a choice, he reminded himself, a conscious embrace of his identity rather than a retreat from it. As he ran through the lyrics he'd carefully crafted, every line emerged from a well of experience. The struggles of feeling unseen, the determination to rise, and the joyful moments of connection had woven themselves intricately into the fabric of his song. These were not merely words, they were his story manifested into sound, an overture to the world that had often cast him aside. His gaze wandered to the notebook on his desk, the lines scrawled across the pages igniting his imagination. Each word was a testament to battles fought and lessons etched deep in his spirit. For years, he'd anchored himself in self-doubt. Now, he was ready to weigh anchor and set sail, the wind of possibility at his back. Still, a strange unease unfurled in his chest. What if he failed? What if the world turned away indifferent to his music? Stepping into the shower, the cascading water washed away remnants of doubt. Steam enveloped him like a cocoon, encouraging clarity. What if he framed this as not merely a performance, but an act of defiance against the skepticism and derision that had so often surrounded him? Each drop of water felt like a pep talk, nudging him toward the truth he had been denying, the strength that lay beneath his insecurities. Upon dressing, he stared into the mirror, searching for the boy who strived to be more than the labels thrust upon him. Emerging before him was not just Malik, a boy adapting to his blindness, but Malik, a musician determined to be heard. In this moment of raw self-reflection, he felt an unexpected surge of power. With time slipping away, he gathered his guitar and took a final look around his room. It felt different now. This space was not a confinement, it was the womb of his creativity, nurturing the voice that awaited its moment. As he stepped outside, the air beckoned, a gentle reminder that life existed beyond the four walls that had held his fears captive. Malik journeyed to the venue, heart beating in tandem with the rhythm of his thoughts. The weight of every step was a reminder of the stakes he had set, but as the building loomed closer, he felt the corners of uncertainty transform into sharp focus. The raw excitement buzzing around him wasn't just for the audience, it was for him too. As he approached the stage, the nerves twisted like vines around his resolve, but with each deliberate breath, Malik sought to drown them out. He could visualize the stage now, the spotlight illuminating him, quiet anticipation where laughter had once lurked. The door opened to the backstage view, and he stole a glance at the room filled with the potential of shared experience. Would he be able to grip that moment and redefine the narrative? Malik clenched his fists, a surge of determination propelling him forward. "Stand tall," he whispered to himself as he took a deep breath, pushing towards the curtain that separated him from everything he had dreamed of undertaking. The world waited. Today was not just about music. It was about discovery, about stepping into the light and reclaiming his voice one note at a time. Would he seize this chance to do the unexpected, or would the shadows once again pull him back into obscurity? Each heartbeat echoed the question as he took that first step toward the edge of the stage. Malik stepped through the curtain, the sudden brightness of the stage lights feeling blinding even to his closed eyes. The roar of applause wrapped around him, a warm embrace that pushed past the barriers of self-doubt. He stood frozen for a heartbeat, tethered between the familiar realm of his fear, the dim shadows of doubt flickering at the edges, and the spotlight that dared him to claim his space, but he was resolved. He took his position before the mic stand, the cold metal cool against his palm grounding him in this moment. Time seemed to stretch, the bustling sounds of instruments tuning fading away as he let the anticipation build. Every heartbeat pulsed as a reminder of everything he had endured, and this was the cathartic explosion he had yearned for. As he leaned into the mic, he felt the energy shift in the audience. He could practically sense the curiosity, the eager anticipation waiting just for him. Malik opened his mouth to sing the first note, his voice breaking free of the chains that had held it captive for too long. Tension swirled in the air as he sang, weaving together tales of loneliness and connection, transformation and defiance. Each lyric flowed with sincerity and carried the weight of his experiences. The words sent vivid images crashing against the walls of self-imposed limitations, and as the song unfolded, Malik noticed something miraculous happening. The crowd was captivated. He felt their energy as they resonated with every word. The realization struck him like a lightning bolt: he was not just performing, he was sharing a piece of his soul, a moment of vulnerability that seemed to echo through the air like a declaration of freedom. But as the final note faded into the night, an unsettling whisper crept back into the corners of his mind. What if this was a fluke? What if they were just being polite? The applause rang out, but mixed within it was an echo of uncertainty he had never anticipated. Had they really understood the depth behind his song, or had he simply stirred them with a fleeting spectacle? As he stepped away from the mic, the stage lit with uncertainty, he spotted a familiar face in the audience: Clyde. A flicker of tension curled in his gut as memories of past derision rushed to fill the silence left in the wake of his performance. Would Clyde embrace this new version of him, or would he ridicule the boy who dared to be different? The voice in Malik's head wrestled with the doubts as the crowd continued to cheer. He turned away, battling the taint of lingering insecurity that threatened to crumble his newfound resolve. The echoes of applause faded as quickly as they had come, replaced by the clamorous chaos of his racing thoughts. Is my voice strong enough? Am I more than just an act? He questioned himself as he stepped backstage, unsteady and breathless. The rush of exhilaration mingled with the fear of inadequacy, a potent cocktail that left him dizzy. Suddenly, he noticed a group of fellow musicians gathering nearby. They were basking in the glow of excitement, sharing stories and compliments. Malik hesitated, the urge to join them at war with the protective instinct to retreat into himself. Who was he to insert himself into their world? Yet a swell of courage arose within him. He took a step closer, propelling himself onward, hoping to cross the threshold from the shadows of self-doubt into a new narrative, one where he was not just a musician but an integral part of this vibrant community. As he gathered the strength to introduce himself, a stark truth took root in his mind. This moment was not a conclusion, it was merely the beginning of an entirely new chapter, one that he could shape with every choice he made. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, a voice sliced through the celebration. "Who do you think you are?" Malik turned slowly, facing the source of the challenge. Clyde stood there, arms crossed, a smirk plastered across his face, loaded with skepticism. The air crackled with unspoken confrontation, an immediate test of resolve. Would Malik rise to meet his doubts, or would he fold under the weight of expectations? His next action could redefine everything. The moment hung in the air like a taut string before plucking, a silence laden with tension. Malik's heart raced, adrenaline surging through his veins. Clyde's question reverberated, not just a challenge but a definitive attack on his very being. Who did he think he was? Just another wannabe musician, a boy with high hopes. The old insecurities began to rear their heads, whispering their toxic chorus of inadequacy. Malik clenched his fists, the metal of the mic stand biting into his palms as he fought against the impulse to shrink back. This was not merely a fleeting moment of confrontation, it was a crucible, a chance to redefine how he viewed himself and his place in this world. Every instance of doubt, every time Clyde had laughed at him, poured into that singular moment, amplifying the stakes. "Who do I think I am?" he echoed, his voice tinged with a mixture of defiance and vulnerability. The crowd, unfocused but attentive, held its collective breath, caught between two stories, the one Malik was ready to tell and the one Clyde was trying to dictate. "I'm someone who just sang their heart out," Malik continued, forcing clarity into his voice. "I'm someone trying to be more than what others expect of me." Each word resonated, pushing against the walls of despair and doubt that had encased him for years, challenging not just Clyde's perception but the one he held of himself. Clyde's smirk faltered slightly, giving Malik a glimpse of uncertainty. The aspiring starlet's bravado was slipping, and for a moment, Malik sensed a shift in the air. Was it possible he was being heard? Could the words that once felt so fragile in his throat be solid enough to challenge Clyde and his taunts? "Support me or step aside," Malik added, his voice steadied by determination. "I'm done allowing others to tell me who I can be." In that moment, he realized he was no longer that little boy terrified of being shunned, he had leaped into the unknown, defying not just Clyde but also the doubts that had lurked in every corner of his past. The laughter, the jeering, it was just noise now, drowned out by the heartbeat of empowerment fueling his resolve. One of the other musicians, a young woman with vibrant blue hair, stepped closer, intrigued. Malik caught her eye, and amidst the tension, an invisible thread began weaving a fabric of connection and unspoken acknowledgement of bravery in the face of adversity. This could be the moment he transformed into not just a participant but a player in this world. But then Clyde laughed, a scoffing, derisive sound. "You think you can just show up here and act like you belong? You're nothing without a pretty sound." The barb cut deep, a visceral reminder of the fragility he had fought so hard to overcome. Yet instead of retreating, Malik felt another wave of strength crash over him. This was bigger than Clyde, it was the culmination of every battle he had silently fought on his own. "Pretty or not, it's my sound," Malik shot back, steeling himself. "I'm not just here to fit a mold, I'm here to break it." With every word, Malik carved his identity deeper, anchoring it in defiance. The energy shifted in the room, charged with possibility. Characters were being reshuffled, the roles of victim and victor danced under the harsh lights of uncertainty. As Clyde opened his mouth, preparing another cut, Malik felt a surge of clarity. It wasn't about winning this confrontation, it was about claiming his voice, a process that demanded audacity and commitment. Realization washed over him. Perhaps this wasn't just a battle against characters like Clyde but a challenge against the ghosts of his own mind. Malik straightened, breath steadying as he felt a surge of camaraderie from the other musicians. The fear began to dissipate, leaving the embers of a fierce resolve glowing brighter. What if he dared to not only embrace this moment, but to cultivate it into something greater? What if this was the spark that illuminated a path toward an enduring artistry he hadn't even begun to imagine? As he looked back at Clyde, determination in his eyes, Malik knew the real journey was unfolding. Would he have the courage to forge ahead and elevate not just his music but his very identity? The choice loomed ahead, a fork in the road where he would either retreat or press forward into the depths of his ambition and creativity. He could feel it. The road ahead was laden with uncertainty waiting to be traversed, but it was his to navigate. And as he took a step forward, the potential grasping at the edges of his consciousness begged the question, could this be the moment where everything changed? The air was electric with the promise of what might come next. In that crucible of confrontation, Malik sensed a pivotal shift, both personally and artistically, blazing just beyond the horizon. And he was ready to embrace it. Malik took a steadying breath, enveloped in the raw energy of the crowd and the flickering lights that danced above him. Instead of cowering, he felt rooted, as if he had finally found the ground he had been searching for. The realization that he could share his voice without fear was almost intoxicating, and he peered into the eyes of those who had previously seemed distant. His gaze settled on the young woman with the blue hair, now standing fully engaged in the moment, her expression a blend of curiosity and encouragement. Something in her stance flipped a switch inside Malik, turning his nerves into a pulsating desire for connection. This wasn't about proving something to Clyde, it was about opening up a dialogue with everyone present, including himself. "Maybe I don't have the sound you all expected," he shouted, a courageous quaver lacing his words. "But I do have a story, a feeling worth sharing." With every syllable, he felt walls crumble, not just in the crowd, but within him. Clyde's face darkened for a moment as he recognized that Malik was gaining ground. "What story could you possibly have that matters?" He spat back, his bravado starting to fade. Malik seized the moment, a spark igniting in his chest. "I'm here to show that we all have our own struggles, our own journeys," Malik continued, fiercely aware of the weight of his truth. "I've been overlooked, doubted, told I'm not enough. But I'm learning that I don't need anyone's permission to be myself." That mere declaration startled Malik. It was as though he had unlocked a door that had been bolted shut, revealing a landscape he had yet to fully explore. A surge of clarity crystallized within him, a realization that his past was just a series of failures but a collection of lessons that sculpted the musician standing before them. As those thoughts swirled, he felt the urge to communicate the warmth and anguish of everything he had experienced. His pulse quickened, the urge to move forward stronger than the fear still flickering at the edges. "My voice might not be conventional, but it's real. It echoes the pain and beauty of everyone who has felt unheard." In uttering those words, Malik acknowledged not just his fears, but the shared humanity in everyone who dared to listen, an unexpected connection reaching beyond superficial expectations. The crowd seemed to shift. Malik could sense a ripple of understanding, and for the first time, their eyes reflected not mere curiosity, but empathy and recognition. Clyde fumbled for a retort, but Malik could see the attack ebbing. There was power in vulnerability, and he was finally wielding it. "Let us create something together," he exclaimed, emotions threading through his voice like a melody. "Not just a performance, but a moment to feel, to grow, and discover ourselves through art." Suddenly, the blue-haired woman took a step forward, nodding vigorously as she joined him on stage. "Yes. Let us make this more than just a competition. Music holds the value of our experiences, let us share them." That moment of solidarity pushed Malik further into his own courage. The electricity between them was alive, an unseen bond forming not just as artists, but as individuals who dared to rise above expectations. As Clyde stood watching, disbelief painted across his features, Malik felt an urgent shift inside. This was just the beginning, not just a fight, but an artistic awakening beckoning him to dive deeper. Would he risk venturing into uncharted waters of creativity, allowing vulnerability to transform into art that resonated beyond the stage? In the heart of that moment, the importance of authenticity shone brightly. The journey ahead shimmered with promise, yet uncertainty loomed, a reminder of the work still to do. With a heartbeat of excitement and trepidation, Malik cast a glance at the vibrant crowd. What would they create together? What revelations about himself awaited if he fully embraced this new path? And so, armed with newfound determination and a voice that was undeniably his own, Malik readied himself for the evolution that was unfolding. The music of possibility lingered in the air as he stepped forward to meet whatever awaited him in this uncharted territory. Would he dare to explore the depths of creativity never previously tapped, risking failure for the chance to achieve greatness? With his heart racing, Malik turned to see the anticipation etched across the faces in the crowd. In his mind, he began to compose the myriad emotions he wished to convey, not just to entertain, but to touch hearts, bridge gaps, and forge connections that echoed beyond the stage. This performance was no longer just an impromptu moment, it was a revelation, an opportunity for growth. He had never imagined that standing in front of a crowd could feel so liberating. The instincts that had once driven him to shrink within himself were transformed into a conduit of expression. With each word he spoke, the urgency of his truth propelled him forward. He glanced at the blue-haired woman, whose eyes gleamed with support, and she nodded, urging him to go deeper. Malik inhaled sharply and began to weave a narrative of his past, a story of persistence cloaked in doubt but laced with faith. There were days when I felt like the dark would consume me, he admitted, his voice rising over the murmurs of the crowd. When it felt like no one was listening, I learned to listen to myself. Through music, I found a way to connect to my own soul. He felt the rhythm take over him now, flowing from a sacred place within. The music he had always carried internally pulsed through him, transforming words into melodies that resonated far beyond notes and lyrics. A flicker of confidence illuminated his spirit. This was the essence of performance. As he sang, he uncovered realms of emotion within him: joy, pain, hope, and the reality of being seen for who he was. But it was dawning on him that this unfoldment danced in a delicate balance. In the depths of his newfound growth, a looming shadow taunted him. Clyde's critique still echoed in the back of his mind. Could he dodge the duel and still prevail in this fight for self-acceptance? A low pulse of insecurity flickered at the edges of his confidence, garnering attention like an unwelcome guest. Malik wrestled with this thought as he continued to project his voice into the crowd, fighting to overshadow that doubt. Art, he declared, isn't merely about perfection. It's about the struggle, the journey. We all have our battles, and music helps us confront them, to share them. The energy surged, vibrating through the audience, a collective grasp on the shared experience. A few faces among the crowd glimmered with newfound clarity. Malik could feel the connection shimmer in the air. For the first time, he saw hope and inspiration reflected in others' expressions. He realized that they too were navigating their own tides of uncertainty. This mutual understanding ignited a sense of belonging he had craved but thought unattainable, and as he poured out his heart into the music, something unexpected ignited within him, a revelation. He was not merely participating in a performance, he was fostering a movement of self-acceptance and interconnectedness that transcended the stage. He absorbed the crowd's energy like the warm glow of the sun and returned it tenfold. Just as the chorus reached its crescendo, Clyde stepped forward, his bravado waning. He opened his mouth to deliver a scathing retort, but Malik saw the uncertainty clouding his eyes. It was a moment of confrontation. Malik's resolve against Clyde's skepticism. Malik swallowed hard. Would he rise above the confrontation with strength or be drawn back into the cycle of doubt? The lights flickered above, and adrenaline coursed through him. Would he embrace this newfound power and silence the voice of critique that had haunted him for so long? In the heart of the unfolding performance, a question hung heavy in the air: what would his next steps be, and would he harness his voice to forge unbreakable pathways, not just for himself, but for everyone willing to listen? The moment was ripe for revelation, a thrilling uncertainty where destiny awaited. Malik faced Clyde, the spotlight blinding yet revealing. The tension in the air thickened as seconds stretched, holding both men in suspended animation. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, drowning out any remaining doubt. Standing there, he drew strength from the vulnerability he had just shared. The energy of the crowd surged around him, a current that compelled him forward. "Clyde," he began, his voice steady, "I don't need your approval to know my worth." These words were both an admission and a declaration. As he spoke, he felt a transformation ripple through him, an alchemical shift of raw emotion and newfound resolve. This was no longer about facing an adversary, it was about reaffirming his own identity. Malik's confidence had cultivated roots deep within him, and as he scrutinized Clyde, those roots expanded. What surprised him most was the stillness in the crowd, a collective breath held in witness of the exchange. He understood this was about more than them, it was about every individual who had ever felt diminished by another's scorn. "Your critiques about perfection may resonate with some, but art has never been about that," he continued, allowing the conviction in his voice to rise. "Art is a mirror, reflecting our deepest fears and joys." He gestured to the audience, inviting them into the moment. "It's about the stories we carry, the battles we face in silence. I'm here because I chose to turn that silence into music." Clyde stepped back slightly, the confidence he wielded now replaced by uncertainty. Malik pressed on, emboldened by the clarity of his message. He was learning that authenticity often cut through the noise, offering clarity where there was once confusion. With the final note still resonating, he directed his gaze outward. As he scanned the crowd, he registered glimmers of recognition. Faces held stories of their own struggles he could sense but might never fully know. He felt a connection solidify in that shared silence, binding them together in a tapestry of vulnerability. The warmth in the air shifted from mere encouragement to a tidal wave of solidarity. Despite the flickers of doubt that still lingered in his corner of consciousness, Malik found that he no longer wished to win over Clyde. Instead, he sought to redefine who he was in this moment. He had begun as a boy seeking validation and stood transformed into a voice of self-acceptance, a harbinger of change. With shivers coursing through him, he realized his performance transcended personal validation. It was calling for a broader consciousness. Through his vulnerability, he had birthed a lesson. Art is a journey for both creator and audience, where perception and empathy intertwined. That he turned his back to Clyde and faced the crowd once more, feeling a new song take form within him. It was one composed not of notes, but of connections forged in shared truths. The crowd's energy shifted, urging him forward. Could they feel his resolve? As he began to strum an opening chord, he could sense the turning tide. Picking up the melody, his heart soared with determination, and thoughts of Clyde faded into the background. The question emerged, even more pressing than before: how would he channel this momentum into other facets of his life? And what awaited him now, beyond this stage? The hesitant anticipation gripped him, as he stepped down a path that promised every bit of light and shadow, truths yet uncovered, and battles still to be fought. As Malik strummed the last chord, the sound lingered in the air like a tangible essence, rich with emotion and an awakening purpose. He let the notes fade, feeling the vibrations resonate through him, brushing against his skin like an electric current. It was exhilarating, yet daunting, this leap beyond the confines of music into a broader realm of self-exploration. The audience was no longer just a backdrop, they were a living extension of his journey, breathing with the rhythm of his growth. In the aftermath of that display, Malik recognized an undeniable shift within. Each face in the audience mirrored back a lesson he had scarcely begun to dissect. They weren't merely spectators, they were participants in his evolution, each of their gazes reflecting a tapestry of hopes and fears. He felt a flicker of responsibility ignite within him. This was a moment to be transformed into action, to uplift not just himself, but those who had quietly supported him along the way. Walking off the stage, the applause still echoing in his ears, Malik's heart raced, not just from adrenaline but from an inkling of newfound ambition. Clyde's earlier presence was still etched in his memory, a thorn that provoked introspection. The confrontation had been unexpected but needed. How far had he grown, and how much further could he push himself? The idea sank in deeply, stirring an energetic pulse that pulsated with every step he took. However, amidst this wave of newfound self-awareness simmered an unsettling tension. questions loomed: could he sustain this momentum? The taste of victory was both sweet and bitter, drenching him in a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. If he was to step onto the next chapter of his life, it demanded more than confidence, it required a careful navigation of the new pathways forming before him. Backstage, he found himself alone for a moment, the faint hum of post-performance chatter fading behind a curtain. It provided a rare stillness, a contrast that allowed reflections to surface unimpeded. He contemplated how this moment reverberated beyond the stage. The vulnerability he had shared reached into unexplored facets of his existence. The music was not just a form of expression, but a crucible for forging resilience, a way to confront his insecurities. Malik realized he held within him a reservoir of untapped potential, both as an artist and as an individual. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it settle into his core, a reminder that true growth is often accompanied by moments of doubt. He could hear the faint echoes of Clyde's critique, but it no longer had the capacity to define him. Instead, it became the catalyst for re-evaluation. What if he used this newfound influence to seek opportunities that had always felt out of reach? In a swirl of determination, he crafted a plan in his mind. The next steps involved daring to express this authentic self beyond mere performance, honing his skills for greater engagement. Perhaps there were forums, workshops, collaborations, any avenue that beckoned an exploration of art as dialogue rather than mere entertainment. The thought dazzled him: to build bridges, to connect hearts, to illuminate paths that he could walk with others. But as grand ideas formed, so too did the shadows of fear creep back in, whispering doubts about whether he was ready, if he had the skills to navigate this challenging terrain. Would he measure up when faced with more significant challenges? The familiar riddle of self-worth threatened to bubble up as he contemplated taking those first steps forward. With a quick inhale, he grasped the reins of his thoughts. The uncertainty, however real, wouldn't deter his urge to pursue this evolution. He whispered a promise to himself: I'll face whatever comes next with the same boldness I found on that stage. A sense of unyielding determination anchored him, and he opened his eyes to the path ahead, realizing that it was only the beginning of his journey. As he stepped away from the comfort of the dim backstage, the idea of stepping into an art community beckoned him, a mixture of thrill and apprehension swirling within. He was ready to face those looming challenges, but little did he know that one encounter would alter the very fabric of his artistic ambitions and lead him to an unexpected confrontation that would test him like never before. Malik stepped onto the stage once more, but this time, it was for a different purpose. The last performance had ignited a flame within him, an insatiable desire to not only create but to forge connections and to inspire. The applause that reverberated in his ears had transformed from mere sound into motivation, pushing him towards the next stage of his growth. He took a moment before speaking, the audience still buzzing in anticipation as he absorbed their energy. "Thank you for believing in the music," he began, voice steady. "But this is not just about me. This is about all of us, every voice that has ever been silenced, every story that has remained untold." A hushed silence fell over the crowd, breathing life into his words. Malik could feel the collective heartbeat of the audience, the pulse of hope and understanding connected them all. It was as if he had tapped into a wellspring of courage that existed not only in him but within every individual present. With every word he spoke, he detailed the journey that had led him here, the trials, the triumphs, the times he had felt adrift. He shared how he had discovered strength in vulnerability and how it had transformed his music into a conduit of expression. "Music is where I discovered my voice, but it's also where I discovered the voices of others," he emphasized. "Your stories inspire my song just as much as my experiences shape them." That night, Malik did not just perform. He engaged. He invited members of the audience to share their experiences, creating a dialogue that resonated long after the lights dimmed. They spoke about their struggles, their dreams, and in those exchanges, Malik felt pieces of himself reflected back at him, strands of a shared humanity intertwining deeper than he could have anticipated. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere in the room shifted from a performance to a celebration. They sang together, laughed together, and for the first time, Malik understood that he was not just sharing music, he was building community. The fears that fluttered in his chest dissipated, replaced by a solid sense of purpose. The applause that followed each collaborative moment felt like a warm blanket, validating every emotion he had laid bare. But the journey didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, Malik set out to cultivate this newfound connection. He organized workshops in his community, inviting young and aspiring musicians to share their stories and find their own voices. He harnessed his talent, not merely to perform but to empower. An article featured in the local newspaper highlighted his initiative, bringing attention to the art of storytelling through music. The recognition felt surreal yet justified a culmination of the determination that had begun with that first hesitant note on stage. Malik's mother, pride radiating from her smile, often joined the practices, her laughter mingling with the melodies, creating a tapestry of unity and belonging. Despite the accolades, Malik was grounded. Reflecting on his growth, he recognized this wasn't just about overcoming fear. This was about embracing every facet of his identity and using it to elevate others. He had not only conquered his insecurities, he had discovered the power of collaboration, resilience, and empathy. The final performance of the series brought everything full circle. Standing in front of a packed auditorium, Malik marveled at the faces before him, not as strangers, but as a collective waiting to share art and stories that would intertwine with his own. He had shifted from a solitary figure at the intersection of uncertainty to a charismatic connector, a recognized musician whose impact transcended boundaries. As the final song rang out, a harmonious blend of voices filled the air, melding individual stories into a magnificent narrative. Malik knew he had not just found his voice, but had created a symphony of shared understanding and acceptance. In that vibrant moment, Malik understood the depth of his journey. It became clear that he was no longer confined by the shadows of his past. He had fully stepped into the light, not simply as a performer, but as a beacon of inspiration for those seeking to share their struggles and soar through their artistic endeavors. And so, Malik conquered fear not just for himself, but for every soul that had once felt unheard. He had transformed adversity into artistry, and the echo of his once timid voice now resonated boldly with conviction, forever changing not just his own narrative, but those who dared to join him on the journey of discovery. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and truly support the healing power of art. Comment with your reactions and theories about Malik's transformation. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is your moment to make an impact. Don't wait even one more second.